you and provide you an opportunity to hear directly from the candidates. And we want you to share your views. There are QR codes displayed throughout the room tonight. And so we want you to scan those. You give us your survey feedback. That's only going to be open today, though, okay? So we need you to do that before you leave. This lengthy process began in April of 2025. When it concludes, City Manager Jay Chapa will have the difficult task of selecting and appointing the city's 27th police chief. Just a quick note here, this will be the 4th chief in the last decade. That brings us to this evening. Let's talk about the forum. After a brief introduction by each candidate, we will ask a variety of questions about their policing philosophy, leadership experience, approach to collaboration, and some other questions. Again, all submitted by you, the community. Residents submitted questions they want to have answered, so our goal tonight is for you to get a better understanding of where each of these candidates stand on the issues that matter to you. The ground rules tonight. The candidates have not seen these questions in advance. I want to make sure you hear that. They will get a fixed amount of time to answer each question. We have a timekeeper to hold us to that timeline there. And for those who are in the in-person audience, I'm going to ask you to make sure your phones are on silent. Take a quick second and do that right now. We ask that you're quiet, avoid giving positive or negative feedback as they answer. No cheering, no booing. We want these candidates to be comfortable, and we want everyone who is in the room and watching the live stream to have an opportunity to hear from them as well. Please hold off on the applause until the very end. We want to get through as many questions as we possibly can. And to the finalists, congratulations to each of you for making it to this point in the process. I wish each of you good luck tonight. We're going to start in alphabetical order, but we're going to mix it up, as I mentioned, as we go forward. So for the first question, our order will be Robert Alldredge, Eduardo Eddie Garcia, and then Mr. Vernon Hale. Gentlemen, are we ready? All right. We are going to begin with question number 1. Remember to introduce yourself first. Briefly, tell us about yourself, your policing career, and why you want to be the next police chief for the city of Fort Worth. Mr. Alldredge.
My name is Robert Alldredge. First, I'd like to thank everybody for being out here tonight, everybody watching online. I know this is a very important position for the city. It's very impactful for what happens to our residents. I'd like to thank Jay Chapa, William Johnson, the hiring committee, for this opportunity to be in front of you today. So for me, before we get started, I have to thank my wife. You know, I've been married 27 years. Nobody does this job or goes into this career without the support and love of your family. I have 3 beautiful kids and 2 grandkids, and they're a joy to be around. So the next part's a little hard for me because talking about myself is very challenging. Because nothing I do by myself. It takes a team. It takes a team of great officers, professional staff, our volunteers, our citizens to make things happen. But some of the initiatives that I've been a part of is our first hashtag Fort Worth Safe, our first violent crime initiative where we changed strategies back in 2021, our criminal justice program where we have high school kids that come into our academy and learn some of the criminal justice procedures. One of the other things that I did was create the civilian response unit. And that was from after the 2020 protest. Some of the citizens were very concerned that they don't always have to have a police officer showing up to their house with a gun, that some of those calls could be handled by somebody else. And so the creation of the civilian response unit was happened, and we expanded that to 22 persons right now. So I've been in this department for a very long time. I have very strong relationships within the department. I have strong relationships in the community. I have strong relationships with city leadership, with the elected leaders. That has only grown over the past 2 decades. So I look forward to the questions and interacting even further. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Eddie Garcia. It's great to see you here. It's an honor to be here in front of you and in front of these amazing candidates. My law enforcement career started back in 1992 in California, in the city of San Jose. I spent almost 29 years with the city of San Jose. I worked in almost every unit you could imagine, from narcotics to SWAT to homicide, and then rising up through the ranks, fugitive apprehension, et cetera, et cetera. And then, I get promoted. I get promoted to lieutenant at one point, and officers who are out there know what this means is when one of their commanders tells them, we're going to need to round you out. And so I go into the community services division. And that was the first time as a lieutenant that, when I realized, listen, there's more to this job than just what we wear around our belt. And that's what made me really start loving the fact that we can reduce violent crime, reduce crime while still increasing community trust. During the time we were there in San Jose, we did some innovative things with regards to community relationships. We had a class for our officers that talked about the fact, and I'm going to say this right now, when it comes to community relationships, we have at times been our own worst enemy. And our officers need to understand what things have led to some distrust that occurs in some of our communities. But we also needed to reduce crime in our city, and we did that. We needed to rebuild a police department where officers were fleeing because of a pension crisis, and we needed to do that. Towards the end of that, I retired from the San Jose Police Department. I took over in the Dallas Police Department. Now I'll say this, coming from California to Dallas, the rallying cry in Dallas at the time was, "Don't California my DPD." And I'll never forget those words. But going to Dallas and working with those men and women and working with the police officers, and police officers are police officers, and you have to build that morale and raise that morale. Some of the proudest things that we did in Dallas was working with our community, working with our council, with our violent crime plan, which successfully reduced violent crime in the city of Dallas for 4 consecutive years and brought down our violent crime numbers to pre-COVID levels, which any criminologist in this country would tell you that is what the goal is. I've seen a lot. I've seen law enforcement change. I've seen police officers change in 2 different areas. I've seen police officers rise to levels of expectation and rise to the levels that you all expected to. After leaving Dallas, I took an opportunity in the city of Austin, being the assistant city manager over public safety there. And it was an amazing opportunity seeing it from the other side. Oftentimes, police chiefs will complain about city management, and being part of that, I was able to understand, why it is that we have to do what we have to do, where we have to keep in mind in budgets and other things of that nature, and it brought a great light to me. But I'll say this, at the end of the day, I'm a cop. At the end of the day, I was born to be a police officer. My daughter lives in the city. My mom lives in North Texas. When I saw this opportunity come, it was a great opportunity for an amazing city that supports its police officers but holds their officers accountable as well. And I'm excited for this process, and I look forward to the questions. Thank you.
Good evening. First of all, thank you to city leadership and Mosaic for giving me this opportunity to be in the finals. This is a wonderful city. My name is Vernon Hale. I'm the proud father of 4 adult children and 4 spoiled grandchildren who I love dearly. That's my job. I supply what they want while their parents supply what they need. We got an agreement, right? And so I began my career in 1991 at the Dallas Police Department, where I rose through the ranks to the rank of deputy chief. I worked in just about every unit there was, and you might remember me from my lieutenant days when I was the PIO and a spokesperson for the agency. And then when Chief Brown was appointed the chief, he made me a deputy chief, and I worked at every patrol division, narcotics, investigations, things of that sort. And I'll go skip around a little bit, because from there, I went, in 2017, I retired after 26 and a half years, became the chief of police in Galveston. But what's more important is 2015. In 2015, one of my great mentors was applying for the Fort Worth Police Department. So this is a personal and professional journey for me. In that process, he always rode his motorcycle, as I do today, because his wife told us to keep riding. He's riding his motorcycle, contemplating the job in Fort Worth, when he was killed by a driver who crossed over the lane. After seeing the outpouring of love from that chief, because to be honest, I didn't want to be a chief. After being PIO, I decided I was going to be an assistant chief for the rest of my life in some major city and just fight crime, let the chief do what the chief does. But I saw the impact he had on Corpus Christi in only 3 or 4 years. And if he could have that impact, so could I impact a community. So that led me off the assistant chief path to the chief path. I then became chief of police in Galveston, Texas, did that for 4 years. You can Google Galveston. We had plenty of challenges there, but I learned a lot. It's only 50,000 people, but 7.5 million visitors. Major events such as Mardi Gras, 350,000 folks. Lone Star Rally, 350,000 motorcycles, not including the cars and what we call cages. The 4th largest cruise port in the U.S., and so a lot of tourist events and things of that sort. I left from there after being asked several times to go to Prince George's County. One of my other, I call him mentor-mentee because we try to help one another, Chief Aziz, kept begging me to leave my beach home and come to Prince George's County. So I left Prince George's County to get back into a major city and observe how to be a chief from a bird's eye view. It was intentional when I went to Galveston. I wanted a smaller department to learn to be a CEO. And then I went to a major department as second in command to get ready for this job. This is the only major city I'm applying for, and I'm here. I look forward to the process, and I love this city. The reason I picked Fort Worth is because you're a stable city. You grow smart. You don't try to cut public safety budgets while growing the economy. You understand that they go hand in hand and we'll work together as communities. But just remember, this is a 50-50 partnership. This isn't about whichever one of us gets chief. The police are the community and the community are the police. So it's not all on me. I'm 50% and you're 50%, and then we'll do this together. I learned that from Chief Aziz. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, we're going to move to question number 2. This time I'd like to start with you, Mr. Garcia. Now, how would you handle a crisis or a high-profile incident? Give us an example when you faced intense media or public scrutiny and how you handled that. And gentlemen, the way we're going to move forward with answering these questions, Mr. Garcia, you'll go, Mr. Hale, and then Mr. Alldredge, and then we'll keep going down the line.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I will say it was the way we handle these type of instances is get in front of it, and we have to be transparent. The more that we get a feeling that it might cause an issue, the faster you need to get out in front of it. Officer-involved shootings are always our most critical incidents that we've had. And when dealing with officer-involved shootings, you have to ensure that you're as transparent as possible. There's an officer-involved shooting that we had in Dallas where the officers had to use deadly force on an individual that produced a handgun. And as one of the officers was shooting, right at that point, the suspect had tossed a weapon that the officer had not seen because there were 3 officers taking him into custody. I get out there that night and, I get shown the video. I see what occurs. And, normally we released body cam within a few days, but this was a Thursday night. And so I remember my staff saying, by Monday morning, we're going to put this out. And I said, no, we're not doing that by Monday morning. We're going to work the overtime that it needs to be done, and we're going to get this out no later than Friday. So on Friday, we have the press conference. We get out in front of it. We show the body cam. We work with our community. Prior to showing the body cam, I had worked with our pastors to show them the video and explain to them what occurred as well, so that they understood the dynamics of it, that they understood what occurred there. So we had our community that understood so that they could be credible messengers as well. We got that message out to the media, and talking to our community, we're able to diffuse a situation that I believe would have been a lot worse had we waited till Monday to put that out. Because over the weekend, we began seeing some social media tweets and things of that nature that were painting a completely different picture of what occurred. And had it not been for the fact that we got out in front of it on Friday, we all know how that social media, when we wait, we can't control the narrative once it comes out. We have to control the narrative at first. Whether it's good or bad, we have to get out there because we can't go back and correct it. And so the messages that were learned really for me from a teaching point to my command staff and others was like, when we have issues, we have to get in front of it. Our community will respect us more to get out in front of it. We have to make sure that they see it because it looks like we're hiding any other way. And so that was a critical incident that happened. There's many more that occurred, but with that one was one where we needed to get out in front of what occurred and explain and be as transparent as possible to our community, to the media, and to our inner pastor group that we're working with to ensure that they can continue to trust us, to ensure that we know that when we know things can cause this type of issue, we'll get out in front of it.
Absolutely. I think Chief hit it on the head. I learned it from my days in Dallas, my days in Galveston, and my days in Prince George's County. But the biggest incident was an international incident, which I'm sure you all saw, where 2 mounted Galveston officers were transporting a handcuffed prisoner between 2 horses. And it went international. BBC, CNN, you name it, I was getting hate mail and calls from everybody. But what I've learned about crisis is I don't quell a crisis when it occurs. I start making those social equity deposits way prior. You can't go ask the community to support you after you've messed up. So what we'll do is from day one, begin to make those social equity deposits with all of our stakeholder groups and build those coalitions and those collaborations on the front end. So in that horse incident, the reason you didn't see any violence and things of that sort is because we had already made those deposits, so I had a check to write. Now, I was overdrawn when it was over, but I had a check to write from those deposits, right? And so we made those deposits, and what people don't know about when that photo came out is that day, same day, I was just as distraught as everyone else, but I called my community stakeholders immediately after calling my boss, NAACP, LULAC, my pastor's faith-based advisory committee, and all those folks, and asked them to schedule a town hall, not me. I let the community do it and promised I would be there. Then we showed up, and as angry and hurt as my community was, I invited the media, but I don't know if you go back and watch it, it's still all over the place. I didn't allow the media to ask one question because I didn't owe the media an explanation in that time. I owed the community that I loved an explanation. It was their police officers on international news, not the media. After that meeting, even those that were angry with me and my officers came up and hugged us and thanked us for what we're doing and supported us. And then when the protest did come to the island, those same community stakeholders sat in lawn chairs and watched and said they're going to support their police because they know he's going to do a fair investigation. But I also have to hold officers accountable if we do something wrong. So I turned that investigation over to Texas Rangers so that we could have an independent review, let them come back with their findings, and then take appropriate actions. But there's community supporters through all that, and so it starts on the front end, not after we mess up. Whether that's a police shooting or anything else, you have to have withdrawal monies in the bank.
So in policing, you have to tell your story. Because if you don't tell your story, it's going to be told for you. On social media, there's a lot of people out there that are going to clip videos to show only certain incidents in a certain way. The one that comes to mind for me was over Independence Holiday a few years ago whenever we had a police-involved shooting with a police officer and an arson investigator. Made it a little bit different because it was an arson investigator that was involved, and normally it doesn't occur that way. The community obviously was outraged. It was a party that was going on. We called the faith-based leaders, in, had good conversations with them. We found out that one of our faith-based leaders, it was a relative of his, was struggling with it quite well. But we spent as much time as we could just trying to explain our perception and kind of our policies and procedures behind how the shooting occurred. Because we know on body cam video it doesn't show everything, it shows a perception of certain things, but body cam's pretty good, and you can slow down some of those videos and see some of the things that actually have occurred and highlight those during the video. Another thing that we did during this process, though, is because it got pretty public pretty quick, is that we made sure that the officers were involved, that we were in contact with them, that we let them know, listen, this is kind of breaking, so you're probably going to see you're going to see this incident on the news. Their names didn't get out there, but we wanted them to be prepared because we know, whenever the social media starts getting out of control, people can usually figure out kind of what's going on, when and where. And, we wanted to make sure our officers, number one, their well-being was taken care of. But number two, that if they didn't watch they didn't watch the news, they knew what we were doing and what we were planning on doing. On top of that, we connected with our Office of Police Oversight Monitor, our legal, our city leadership team, the mayor and council. We had in-depth conversations about that incident. We talked about, the steps moving forward. We talked about how we were going to do the press conference, how things were going to roll out, and how things were going to play out. Unfortunately, some of the citizens, they still weren't okay with the way that turned out. However, whenever you give citizens a voice, you get them an opportunity to at least vent their frustrations, and we sit there and we listen to it. There is a different connection that you have, because that's when you start seeing the trust being built. It's not in that tragic incident, because we meet with those faith-based leaders on a continuing basis. And so, although they did question some of the actions, whenever it was all said and done, they understood our perspective, and they didn't like it, but they understood kind of how it played out. And I'll tell you, without that connection with the faith-based leaders, because they're community leaders, they're the ones that are echoing our voice, our message out into the community, because they can go into places that people don't want to talk to us. But yet, they do want to play on social media thinking they know exactly everything that's going on. And so, without those connections in our community, that thing would have spiraled out of control, and we'd probably still be dealing with it today. So those relationships are extremely important. But the communication piece up and down the chain, up and down with our city leadership, being involved in this, it's very important.
Next question, we'll start with you, Mr. Hale. Share some insights, if you are selected for this position, about the duration of your commitment, not only to the city, but to the Fort Worth Police Department, and what your priorities will be for the department.
Well, my commitment is, I'm an old man now, so this is the last police chief job I will have. I can assure you of that. And so, just being honest. And so, my prayer is that I can make it to 60 or 62 and get to Social Security at least. But if the relationship between me and the community and the elected officials is still mutually beneficial to both of us, then we'll be here for the long haul. I won't be applying for any other jobs to leave here. I'll be part of this community. I'll be living in this community. My priorities will be what your priorities are. The first 90 days, I'll be doing a listening tour to see what you all have to say, to see what my police officers have to say, to see what the city leadership and council and elected officials have to say. I'll try to identify each of your priorities and then see where the low-hanging fruit is. Many times, these 12 different stakeholders might have a priority that is the same and don't even know it. So if we all have the same priority, we can go ahead and initiate those immediately if everybody wants the same thing. And then we find the things that are easier to do. What are the hard ones? What are the medium ones? We'll triage those priorities and then work together to close as many gaps as we can so that we're all aligned, and some things we're not going to agree on. The one thing I always promise all of my community members, my bosses, my troops, and everyone is, you might not agree with me, you might not like what I say or do, but I will never lie to you. And so if I can't do something, I'll tell you, and it'll be on me. It's as my old boss used to say, sometimes folks are contributing eggs and sometimes folks are contributing ham. I understand that my ham is the one on the line when we make these decisions.
Mr. Alldredge.
So I wasn't looking for this chief job whenever it came open. I wasn't looking for another chief job. That's not what I'm about. My career is here in Fort Worth. That's what my commitment has been. I've been here for 26 years, and I don't plan on going anywhere else. I love this community. I love the officers. I love our professional staff. I love our volunteers. I love the city leaders. I love everything about it. That's what makes Fort Worth great, is all of us. It's not one small entity. It is everybody working together. We may not always agree, but by God, we will come to the table and we'll talk, and we can agree to disagree and go on down the road. So my priorities for the department, the 30, 60, 90-day plan, it's already in motion. As soon as I sat in the seat as interim chief, I wasn't going to sit there and let that seat get idle. There are already things that I put in motion. I've already met with community stakeholders. I've met with patrol officers. I've met with the sergeants, the lieutenants, the deputy chiefs, the assistant chiefs. I've already done write-outs in patrol. I've already gone and met with our gang unit and other enforcement units across our department. My vision is clear. We're here to serve the community. That's what our goal is. Our here is a level of service that they want to be and feel like we are there supporting them. Because my true belief is, no matter the zip code that you live in, you should be treated exactly the same. You should get the same level of service, and the call should be answered exactly the same way. And so that's the message that I send to our officers. Because really, for me, whatever you measure matters, and whatever matters gets measured. And it's really important for us to continually check in to make sure we are meeting those thresholds. We are meeting the community expectations, time in, time out. I can tell you, I have been here for quite a while, and I've gone through the history of our department. I know where we were in 2020, and it was a very dark time for our city. And I know where we are today, which is nowhere near where we were. And all of that is all the hard work of those great men and women out there trying to cultivate those relationships. Because for us, community policing isn't just a word. It's something that we do every single day. It is ingrained in how we patrol our citizens out there. It's how we serve them. So for me, it's a level of service that we have to continually give back, because this is greater than all of us. And it's greater for every individual officer that's out in the street, our professional staff supporting us on the backside, and our Code Blue volunteers, our CERT volunteers, all of our volunteers that are in the city that are giving time to us to help our department and our city be safe. Because the overall goal is that this is a place where everybody can come, live, play, and work, and feel safe being here. Thank you.
So for me, again, in these last 8 months, one of the things that I decided, I'm a cop. I want to come back to North Texas. This is where I first was shown Texas when I got here from California. My daughter lives here. My daughter goes to school here. My daughter hopefully will soon have a job in the area. She's not going anywhere, and I'm be close to my baby girl. My mom lives in North Texas. She's getting older. I need to be closer. I want to be here. I want to stay here. I have no limit to how long that I will be here. I'm not as young as I used to be, but I still have a lot of energy, and I have a lot more to give. You know, having experiences coming from 3 different major cities. Again, I was the chief of police in the 10th largest city in the country. I was the chief of police in the 9th largest in the country. I was an assistant city manager over public safety in the 12th largest city in the country. I may not have been homegrown here, but what I offer is looking at the experiences that I have learned in all those departments and looking from an outside lens of what other things can we do. This department, this city is not broken in the least bit. But we need to look at what we can do to do that better. And I believe that having those experiences are helpful. You know, like Chief Alldredge said, nothing that I've ever accomplished is on my own. It's always been with a team. The only reason I got to Dallas was because the city and the men and women of the San Jose Police Department. The only reason I had an opportunity in Austin or being here is because of the men and women of the Dallas Police Department and that city council in that city. That's the only reason I have been honored to be here, is because of the work that we collectively did. You know, my priorities, quite frankly, have never changed. It's really the reduction of crime. It's to increase police morale and to increase community trust. And, you know, before I even get to the reduction of crime, we got to make sure that our morale is high within the department. Because you know what? We're not going to be able to do a thing if morale's low or if morale gets low. We had to ensure that we always have our finger on the pulse, that we're trying to see and make the daily lives of our men and women better here. We need to ensure we do that, because without that, we're not going to recruit. Without that, there is no violent crime plan that's going to work. So morale of the police department is one of the main priorities that we have to ensure that we have. Ensuring that our patrol officers' morale is high. Ensuring that we're recruiting. Ensuring that those bodies are coming. When we talk about reduction of violent crime, is understanding that having a plan that does the work that needs to get done today with the investments that we have to make in people and places. Making sure that we put officers in the right places that they have to be. There's not a criminologist in this country that's not going to tell you that it's very few neighborhoods that are responsible for the large percentage of violent crime. And I know this isn't a secret to some people, but 100 robberies aren't committed by 100 different people. So it's also true for people. So working with criminologists and working with experts to ensure that not only we're reducing violent crime, but we're increasing community trust. Because it's not success if we're just reducing violent crime and community trust goes down. It isn't. And then when we start talking about, you know, the community trust that we have to build, you know, it goes with that. Ensuring being out in our community, making sure that the first time our communities see us is not in a moment of crisis. You know, we can't get around the table when crisis hits. We have to make sure we have to have those conversations, and we have to have them. But those 3 things, if you stay on those 3 things, success will happen, because I have seen it happen. I have been part of a team that's seen that happen. You know, when we talk about a 90-day plan or a 100-day plan, what I envision, quite frankly, if I was fortunate enough to have this opportunity, is really building the plane as it flies. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if on week 1 I see a better way to interact with our community, I'm going to implement it. I'm not going to wait 100 days. If on week 2 I see a better way for us to recruit, I'm going to implement that on week 2. I'm not going to wait 100 days. If I see a better way to build morale within the department on week 3, then I'm going to do that in week 3. There's not a major decision that I've ever made in the police department that I've not brought stakeholders on board. So understanding that, obviously larger decisions are going to take more time. But those are the type of visions of things that I'm not thinking they work. I know they have worked when you get a team behind you.
Next question, Mr. Alldredge, we'll start with you. What successes have you experienced with data-driven, evidence-based policing strategies when seeking to reduce incidents of crime in high-impact areas? Also, discuss how you ensure that you maintain the community's support in those efforts.
So that's a really good question. So we can go back to the Fort Worth Safe initiative that I started in 2021. It's a lot different than what we had previously. Previously, we did a lot of saturation details in our hotspot areas. Hotspots are, if you look at a weather map, that's kind of where you would see a lot of police officers. The problem with that is we would unfortunately get innocent people caught up in that net. We would have mothers or fathers coming to and from work that would get pulled over, maybe tickets issued to them, and basically, for lack of a better term, they just couldn't move about their daily life if they lived in that hotspot area, and they knew it. So in 2021, what we did was we took an absolute evidence-based approach to that. We have 90 beats in our department, or at least we did prior to Saturday. We had a beat realignment, but we had 90 beats. Within those 90 beats, we had 824 PRAs, and PRAs are called police reporting areas. They're very small geographical areas within the beats. We looked at the highest crime areas, the top 20 highest crime areas across the city, and saw what can we do to impact those areas. And so, like Chief Garcia said, it's not the majority of the people committing the majority of the crime. It's the minority of people committing the majority of the crime. And so within those PRAs, one of the things that we tasked our neighborhood patrol officers were, go look at the environmental factors that are going around in that area to see if we can have an impact, or do we need to reach across the aisle to code compliance, to TPNW, to somebody else that maybe it's not a police issue, but it's an environmental issue that maybe it's a drug house, maybe it's a convenience store that we need to do a nuisance abatement on. Maybe there's just blight within the neighborhood that we can get cleaned up by, our parks department, by bringing some of the mow trucks through there. And so with that, we basically focused a lot of our efforts on that. But combined with that, we started really using surveillance cameras. And surveillance cameras allowed us to surgically go in and remove some of those bad elements without impacting the entire neighborhood. And so while this plan was going on, our neighborhood patrol officers were talking to the community members, they were talking to business owners, they were talking to everybody to see, are they seeing what we're seeing? Because at times, from a police, I can't tell them, I know this is best for you, because they're living it every single day. So getting their input and their feedback was critically important for this plan to work. And so using the cameras, and I can use this one example, is at a convenience store that we've had troubles with for quite a while. We could see that there was an individual that was there flashing a gun around, shouldn't have had a gun, and there were multiple people standing around him. The officers went in, they surgically removed that one individual, put him in the car, got out of there without any issues whatsoever. Historically, what would have happened is every one of them would be on the ground. Every one of them probably would have been handcuffed, put in the back of a car. They would have been searched, and a lot of bad things and bad implications for that community would have happened. Then the trust would have been, waned within our city, and then there would have been bigger issues to deal with. Another issue of that violent crime initiative was family violence. So we knew that family violence, it was about 50% of our aggravated assaults. And so the one thing we tasked our domestic violence unit with was, for strangulations or felony offenses, write those warrants as quick as you can, process it as quick as you can, so we can go out there and pick up those offenders very quickly. Because what was happening is, those warrants would sit in the queue like every other warrant, and they would sit there for 3, 6, 8, 10, 12 months before maybe we came across that individual again. So there really was no deterring factor for the family violence offenses and aggravated assaults. For us, we saw a decrease in aggravated assaults the next year with some of those proactive efforts. And so we also know that strangulation and felony offenses for family violence also lead to homicides. And so if you take a proactive approach to try and address those issues in the very beginning, try and give them services, victims assistance, those are some very good outcomes that come from that. And the last thing that we did is that kind of a cleanup approach, which was the MPOs would go back into the community after we did some enforcement to see, is what we did work? Or do we continue to try and do something else? And so the great men and women of the police department, man, they were phenomenal. They took the marching orders, they did exactly what we wanted them to do, and it worked out really, really well. So I'm happy to report that we are continuing the Fort Worth Safe Initiative as we're going on today, and we've seen a reduction in violent and property crimes since then.
I'm going to ask you, gentlemen, a little housekeeping. Hold your mic like this. That way we can make sure we're hearing you. It'll help with the feedback a little bit. I know we're getting it, so thank you for your patience, everybody. Same question for you, Chief Garcia.
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, I think police chiefs, around the country really need to start working with criminologists to really know what's occurring. That's not only data-based, but science-based as well. One of the things working with criminologists in the city of Dallas was the Dallas Violent Crime Plan, where it was 3 parts, and this is what we told our community. The first part was hotspot policing. The second part was place network investigations, and the third part of it was focused deterrence. And I'll go through them all. The first thing that we did, we divided the city of Dallas into about a little over 100,000 grids. Now, a grid, which is a hotspot, is no larger than 2 football fields. Because you see, it's not the big red blob that you ever see, it's the brighter red blob that's in the middle that you need to address. So we were able to address 40 to 60 of those areas. Now, again, I'm not a big math guy, but 40 to 60 of over 100,000 grids is a very small percentage. However, those 40 to 50 were responsible for almost 7 to 10% of the city's overall violent crime. So working with the criminologists, we reduced violent crime in those particular areas, particularly gun crime. And to be a grid, you had to have led the city in incidents of murder, robbery, or aggravated assault, and most of the time gun-related. And we would treat those areas in 2 ways. We would have officers on scene with their lights on for 15 minutes in those particular areas, and we would have intelligence-led policing in those areas. Where are the drug houses? Who's got the warrants? Where are illegal gaming houses? Those type of elements, and be surgical about it. What we saw at the end of that is not only did violent crime reduce in those particular areas, but one of the byproducts that the criminologist said, we've had less arrests in the city of Dallas. We had less arrests, crime was going down, and calls for service were going down as well. The second part of that plan is place network investigations. And place network investigations is seeing an area that's a larger footprint and looking at the police department as a cog in the wheel. Because I'll tell you this, when it comes to violent crime, police departments are the Tylenol, we're the Advil to reduce the fever. We are not the cure to the illness. And so when you start looking at these footprints and you start saying that the police department is just a cog in the wheel, and you see this problem strip mall, you may need to hold landlords accountable. You may need the city attorneys there. You may need streets. You may need lights. And so it starts being a holistic approach of a complete team effort to get an area that has been historically involved in violent crime out of it. When crime goes up, it's not just the police department's fault. And when crime goes down, it's not just because of the police department either. It's because of everyone locking arms and working together. The last piece of the crime plan is, focus deterrence. And focus deterrence is the fact that you get a group of individuals that would be otherwise involved in a life of violent crime, and you bring them together. And I'm talking about, you're bringing the shot callers. You're not bringing individuals that are committing petty theft. You're bringing individuals that either have been victims of aggravated assault, they've actually committed aggravated assaults, or on probation, parole, or what have you. And they come sit in a room, and we give them 2 messages. We tell them, number 1, we bring everybody. We bring the DOJ, we bring the FBI, ATF, you name it, our DA's office. We tell them, we are not going to allow you to hurt our city. We will use every tool we can to ensure that you don't hurt our city. However, we want you to succeed. And we want to have a holistic set of systems and programs surrounding you that if you need a job, if you need job training, if you need education, if you need your driver's license because you just got released from custody, we want to help you get on that proper path. Because at the end of the day, the reality of it is, if those individuals fail, they're not going to fail for spitting on the sidewalk. They're not going to fail for running on the red light. They're going to fail because someone else in our community has been victimized. We need to ensure and understand also that blight and empty lots and the fact that we have not invested in certain areas for a very long time builds into that. There is not a criminologist in this country that will tell you that the root of violent crime is not in poverty, education, joblessness, food deserts, and family structure. I've worked with criminologists, and that they're going to tell you that. Now, none of those things have to do with what we do, but we have to respond to that. So while at the same time we need to invest in people and places, those type of systems aren't going to manifest themselves into people not getting shot today. So we need both. We need investments in people and places. We need to have people give people a chance once they've served their time and done and paid their justice. And we also have to have officers visible and put our officers in the place where they are most likely to succeed. And with that, we saw great success in the city of Dallas with that plan, and using the data, using the criminologists that we constantly reviewed and the criminologists constantly looked at. And we would go back to our communities, and in those hotspot areas, we weren't just treating them for violence. We were having our community affairs division and others teaming up with grade schools and the schools that fed that area, and making sure that our kids didn't see us just in a moment of crisis, that our communities just didn't see us in a moment of crisis. And that brought community trust up. And those are some of the things that I think, working with data, working with criminologists, putting our officers in the best places to succeed, works well to reduce gun violence and reduce overall violence.
Try to keep it short because I see her looking at that clock over there. But first of all, we're all major city chiefs. If we didn't know how to fight crime, we wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today. And so we can just talk about some of the strategies we use. I'll use one neighborhood as an example. When I was in Prince George's County, there was a neighborhood who everybody complained about, even the people that didn't live there, that was clearly one of the, what they considered most dangerous neighborhoods in the county. I won't name that neighborhood. They said it's been that way for 35 years and it's just gonna be that way. We were getting pictures of folks shooting dice near squad cars and such, because even the police appeared to have given up on this area. And so every plan that I do will include 3 elements. It will include engagement, enforcement, and prevention. You can't have enforcement without the other 2. So in this neighborhood, they came crying to us, to what some would consider over-police. But we told them every neighborhood has a right to be policed the way they want to be policed. So if that's what they want, they need to formally ask us to come in there and start making those traffic stops and appearing to profile people or whatever that may be. And they begged for it, including the council folks. So what we did, we brought all the stakeholders together, the faith-based community in that area, the council persons, and any other stakeholders, business owners, and everyone. And we had regular meetings. We did a 90-day crime plan focusing in that area. But that meant my PAL officers had to go in there and create programming for the youth in that area. That means we led the effort to get street lights that hadn't been lit in a decade done within a few days. We shut down a nuisance business. We had other business owners hire armed and unarmed security. So it has to be a holistic approach. So we use enforcement, engagement, and prevention. And we focus on, as you said, data, people, places, and behaviors. So if you focus on the right people, the places, and the behaviors, and using all 3 elements, then you can help reduce crime. The outcome of that plan, after 90 days, there was not a single violent crime in that neighborhood. Not one, not even a domestic violence. And we weren't inside people's homes because the community worked together. When the community members who were getting stopped in the middle of the night called their community stakeholders, the stakeholders told them, we asked them to do that, so why were you out there at 2 in the morning? This is not a complaint. Don't call me with that nonsense. And so we did that for 90 days, having regular meetings with those stakeholders, tweaking the plans that need to be tweaked if we were doing something wrong or needed to adjust. But as long as we include everyone, that beat is still not back at the top of the charts. It's staying down with only 2 or 3 officers maintaining the area. So if, again, it's a 50-50 partnership. And if we all work together and you tell us what you think you need in your community, we can work together to make that happen in a legal and fair and unbiased way.
All right, gentlemen, I'm gonna have to give you a little cue when you got 30 seconds. I wanna make sure we get to the end of these questions. Look, crime reduction is important, and I wanted to make sure you had ample time to answer those questions. We're gonna go to community relations and trust building. Mr. Garcia, you'll answer first. How will you build trust and enhance the police department's connections with all communities in Fort Worth, ensuring both that effective crime reduction and the protection of civil rights?
Well, first of all, we can't be sit in our office kind of chiefs. I'm not a stay in my office kind of chief. You have to go out to your communities. You have to be in your communities and listen to your neighborhoods first and foremost, ensuring that you listen to their needs, listen to their concerns. I always say this, there's not a community meeting that I've ever been at, that when there's people there, whether they're praising the job the department's done or letting me have it because we haven't provided them enough police services, that I don't tell the group that that's a precious gift. It's a precious gift that they feel that we're going to listen, that's why they're here. And so when we're listening to our communities to ensure that we're building that community trust, and every community is different. There are communities in our city here that are impacted by violent crime. There's other areas that don't necessarily have violent crime, but they have quality of life issues that we have to respond to. that we're going to have to listen to them. That builds trust when we do that. That builds trust when our community knows that we care, that we listen. Going around where our business community is another part where that it gets left out sometimes with regards to when we're talking about these type of issues and trust building. You know, when we talk about the civil rights, right, ensuring that we have policies and a culture in place that aren't violating those things to our community, ensuring that we're studying ourselves, ensuring that we continue to study ourselves with regards to use of force, continuing to study ourselves with regards to racial profiling, the Sandra Bland Act, and other things that bring trust down very often. Having experts come out and look at us, outside experts, to say, how are we doing? Help me understand, because I, as a police chief, want to know if something's wrong with this police department before anyone else does, so that I can fix it and so that we can fix it. Making sure that we're transparent with what we're trying to accomplish in our neighborhoods. Making sure that we have a line with our neighborhood leaders, and making sure that we are responsive to their needs, and making sure either myself as a chief or our people that are in those areas are responsive to their needs. But short of us not being out there, there is no magic bullet. We have to get out there into our communities, into our neighborhoods, and figure out and talk to them and understand what their issues are so that we can better those situations. Obviously, with our officers being in the right places at the right time, our officers being able to talk to our community and our community groups, but ultimately, that's how we strengthen our community and trust that the police department's there. With regards to civil rights, again, the last piece I'll give is studying ourselves, holding officers accountable. You know, when we're right, we're right. And when we're wrong, we're wrong. And we have to ensure that we're loud in both instances to raise that community trust so that they know that we can police ourselves, that we have policies and procedures and a culture that doesn't allow for that. And so those are the things as a police chief that we need to look at to ensure that our communities trust us, while at the same time making sure that our residents' rights aren't violated by the officers, aren't violated by our policies, and having outside experts that tell us how we can strengthen those.
Being present. I'll be there. I'll be at the community meetings. We'll have town halls, and we'll talk, and we will listen. Whether we agree or disagree, we will always communicate and be fair with one another. That's number one. All of our advisory groups, I'm sure there's a chief advisory group here, a faith-based advisory group. We will communicate with them on a regular basis and talk about those issues on the front end. We shouldn't have to wait until the back end to talk about them. So we will be ahead of those things before they ever occur and immediately thereafter, so that the faith-based advisory committee, as an example, can go back to their congregations and tell them what they said straight from the horse's mouth. It's not a rumor, it's not innuendo. We know what happened, and this is what it was. When it's appropriate, we will be able to share those videos and do those all the things. We will bring a series of conversations with the community. And I'm not talking about the community that love us. I'm talking about the communities that don't historically talk to us. When we got to Prince George's County, there was already a series of what they called real talks with the citizens. What we did was expanded those real talks to lockup facilities, the adult jail, the juvenile facilities in those cases, because we also need to talk to those other folks that don't like us as much and ensure that we don't throw away the people, we throw away the behaviors they're committing and hope them get back into society. We went to every returning citizen graduation. We had a lieutenant or a sergeant at all times assigned to the returning citizens work groups. And so all those things matter. One of the greatest achievements, I believe, in my career after 34 years is at one of our real talks with a group of citizens, many of whom would not even give us their name because they had never met with cops in their life. And the meeting location would not even be given till the day of. These were what Chief just called the shot callers. And we sat in that room, and in one of our final meetings, one of those shot callers said, "I've spent over half my life incarcerated. I've only ever hated cops, and in fact thought one day I might have to kill one. But now I found myself shaking your hand and hugging you all. And that never would have happened because I never would have even said hi to a cop. That's important to me."
So transparency and accountability. In those communities that don't have trust with the police department, that's what they beg for the most. And so in order to repair that, you have to communicate often, you have to go meet them where they're at, and you have to start building relationships. Not when bad things happen, but whenever things are going well. We have a very robust community engagement unit that is out in the community in those areas that we're trying to gain trust. Some of you may have seen the Taste of Eastside that we had just recently. And having community events like that where our officers take off their uniforms, they cook meals for that community to bring them together so we can have honest conversations, because that's what it's all about. We need to be able to sit at the table and talk to each other instead of sitting away from each other and talking about each other, because the only way we're going to solve things is sitting at that table together. So the community is the one that has the pulse on the neighborhood. The community leaders, and it doesn't matter if they like the police or don't like the police. You have to continually try to have those conversations, continually reach out, go to where they're at and talk, because eventually you're going to break them down. They're going to start talking to you, because if you tell them, I'm going to be here until you start talking to me, and we start talking about the issues going on in your community, because they are the force multipliers in that community. Because if they're not talking to us, how many others aren't? Because if we are not knowing what the issues are in that community, how can I work with them? Because the police is only one arm of this whole system that makes a community safe. It takes all of us. It takes the community, it takes the police department, it takes code compliance, it takes all city departments, it takes city leaders, it takes our elected leaders, it takes our representatives, it takes everybody working together to make everybody feel safe in their community. So, for us, it is all about relationships, because if you have really good, strong, positive relationships, then whenever negative things happen, then it's a lot easier to overcome.
All right, Mr. Hale, you'll answer first on this one. Like most major cities in the United States, Fort Worth is confronted with addressing the increase in homelessness or houselessness. What role should police play in addressing issues associated with homelessness, and how would you coordinate with other agencies to do so?
Absolutely. Anybody that's ever heard me speak knows that I say all the time that homelessness and mental health, we're law enforcement. Neither of those is illegal. It's not illegal to be homeless, not illegal to be mentally ill. So we should not be the lead, but we should absolutely be a leader at the table. And so we should be at the table to make sure that our NGOs, our social working groups, our vet coordinators, and all those folks have the resources they need to go to these scenes safely and address these issues that are social and economic. Some of these folks, I met a veteran once who had a military retirement check and a Social Security check, yet he was homeless by choice. He owned a home that his family lived in, that he could go to at any time, but he chose to be what he called an urban camper. And so some of these folks don't want that assistance, and we got to find ways to help them overcome those crises to want safe housing. We have to continue to do that. We know that there's not a lot of mental health beds in the state of Texas, and we have to look at long-term care facilities for those in need. But I will certainly work with every partner and NGO who does this better than us, work with our social groups, work with our universities who have social services experts, and my daughter is a licensed social worker. And so those folks know what to do far better than police, but we need to be there to make it safe for them.
So 2020 was a bad year for everybody for a variety of different reasons, whether it was COVID, the social unrest, you name it. In the city of Fort Worth, prior to COVID, our unhoused population was in the Lancaster corridor. That's where the services are. That's where the shelters were. I don't know what the catalyst was, but after COVID, the homeless population kind of exploded to all reaches of our city. Doesn't matter where you're at, you get to hear about homeless camps, you get to hear about panhandling, and not all panhandlers are homeless, and not all homeless are panhandlers, but there is some correlation to that. And so when I go to neighborhood meetings, that is the biggest topic they talk about, is the camps and the panhandlers. And so in the police department, we have the HOPE team, a homeless outreach, prevention, and enforcement unit. They do partner with our mental health liaisons that help in that arena because they're not there to provide enforcement. That's the last tool on their tool belt. Their whole goal is to try and help them to get to services. Their whole goal is to try and get them out of that situation where they are to begin with. In the city of Fort Worth, we have a homeless high impact program where we're trying to get high risk, high homeless individuals into housing quicker with some of that funding. That program has been extremely successful, so much so that they ran out of funding. And so we're trying to work with city leadership to try and get more individuals help. But for us, I worked with Jim Davis, our fire chief here in Fort Worth, a few years ago. We partnered together and we had a firefighter, a paramedic, MHMR professional, and a police officer riding around in a gator in our homeless area. And the whole purpose was to do check-ins for them, to make sure that they were taking their medication, because they were using our ambulance service, or MedStar ambulance service, to take rides to JPS, and they were straining the system. And so we found a better way to try and serve them without having to take them to jail or do some other thing, and help them try and get the services they need. One of the last things that I'm going to mention, I know time's running, is the diversion center. We have a Tarrant County diversion center. And so some of the low-level offenses that our homeless population commits, whether it's criminal trespass, vandalism, things of that nature, we're able to take them to the diversion center, and there is no criminal connotation associated with it. The officer spends about 5 minutes filling out a piece of paper. They get them into the diversion center, and the diversion center is a one-stop shop. They have the counseling services there. They have other services to help them get jobs, to help them get out of the homeless situation that they're in. And they provide long-lasting care beyond the time that they're in that diversion center. So we have a lot of resources here in Fort Worth, but of course it takes all of us, working together, because I don't want to criminalize a homeless individual just for being homeless. I mean, that's the last thing that we want to do, because we're not going to arrest our way out of any problem, much less that one. So I believe that's about it.
I would say it was very clear responses with regards to our stance with regards to not criminalizing homeless. There's no question about it, or mental illness. We need to look at multidisciplinary approaches when we're dealing with individuals and dealing with these contacts, but we shouldn't be the tip of the spear. I mean, there has to be there that we're working in concert and in the back a little bit to make sure that they're trying to accomplish with regards to getting resources, make sure they're getting treatment, their medication, things of that nature. That to have, centers and areas that we can take them for low-level offenses, because again, just the fact that someone's homeless, it doesn't mean someone is going to be the victim of a crime. Because someone's homeless also, it's not going to affect where their business is occurring. So we have to ensure and do our very best to get people resources and make sure that we have the right individuals, social service providers, mental health professionals that are there to assist to ensure that they can get to where they need to get to and get the resources to them. The problem comes where some people want to stay homeless. There are individuals that don't want the help. And so there has to be a level of some tough love where we really have to do something to move people along and to clear certain areas, because it affects our businesses and it affects our homes, it affects quality of life. And so ultimately we have to work with our city, we have to work with homeless solutions, we have to work on rehousing and other things, but it has to be a holistic approach, because generally mental illness plays a significant role in this particular issue. And so when we talk about encampments and other things, when there's crime that comes out of encampments, ensuring that those individuals get the proper resources that they need if they're gonna take them, make sure that we conduct outreach. But again, at the end of the day, although we don't want to do it, at some point there has to be some enforcement at a very low level to ensure that these areas are abated, so that they don't affect our neighborhoods, our businesses, and our community. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we want to ensure that enforcement is the last thing we do. But also, I have seen it happen where lack of enforcement then leads to a bigger problem that then we have to fix. So collectively, I think with all the systems and programs that Fort Worth has and other cities have, with the CBOs, NGOs, and other things, and mental health, obviously, which is incredibly important, to make sure that those resources are available, that we have a multidisciplinary approach when our officers are even responding, to ensure that we need people that have the expertise. We need medics, we need clinicians that are there, and having our officers kind of be back to ensure that those situations are handled. But ultimately, in the end, getting people the proper resources they need, but at some point, making sure that if we need to take enforcement action, we take the most minimal action, but our community also demands that their quality of life isn't at risk either.
Mr. Alldredge, you'll go first on the next one. We're going to talk about officers. When it comes to staffing your department, if you are selected as chief, how will you recruit and retain future applicants who want to work for Fort Worth PD, given the strong competition from other agencies throughout the region? And additionally, we know the job's hard and it can take a toll. How do you support the officers and the professional staff's mental and emotional well-being and health as well?
Okay, so the city of Fort Worth, we do and we do not have an issue with recruiting. We don't have an issue because we have many applicants that want to be Fort Worth police officers. The latest application that we have open right now, we have over 1,800 applicants. And so that's the most we've had in a very long time. We have a very robust lateral program, which is a lateral entry officer program, officers that are already certified coming over to our department. That has been so popular that we've had repeat officers from multiple agencies go through our program. Where I say that we do have an issue is that we still have certain demographics that we want to represent our city. And so, you know, in the African American community, in the city of Fort Worth, it's about 19%. In the Fort Worth Police Department, it's about 11%. One of the promising things with some of the things that we've done recently is that we've partnered with Cumulus. And Cumulus Media has a very robust platform for recruiting efforts. And they have, you know, algorithms where they can reach the communities where we're trying to recruit certain demographics. The last report that I got is that actually African Americans outpaced the number of applications for white applicants most recently. In our Hispanic community, I have no problems recruiting Hispanics. They far outpace the whites and the African Americans. But one of the other areas that really is a challenge for us is females. So getting a female officer, you know, to meet, you know, some of the demands that we have of this job is very, very challenging. And so, you know, some of our recruiting efforts is we just established a recruiting team a couple of years ago. They've been very active out in the community at the military bases. Another thing that we've done is that, you know, we're partnering not only with the POA, but the BPOA, all our, the Latino POA, to help with recruiting efforts either at HBCUs or other facilities where we think we can have a greater impact to get some of those into our department. On the wellness side, a couple of years ago, the gracious nature of our city council voted and approved wellness officer positions for our officers inside the department. And so our officers do mental health check-ins on certain calls that they go on to make sure that they understand the resources they have. We also have what we call a blue chip program, and it's actually a poker chip because there is a stigma with officers asking for help. Well, that blue chip program is absolutely anonymous. If they want to go see a psychiatrist, they want to go talk to somebody, they take the blue chip, take it to the provider, there's no names written down, they can have as many counseling services that they want. And so with the robust, you know, EAP program that we have for our officers, because our officers' well-being is number one. It is our greatest resource. And if we do not take care of them, then we're doing something terribly wrong. And so we also partner with American Warrior Association and R3, and they can take they have the opportunity to take some mental health vacations. They're not a vacation because they're actually a workshop that they go to, but to decompress and to get out of that environment. One of the last things that we've done internally with the police department just recently is that we've allowed patrol officers to have a wellness break or a workout break during their shift. And so historically, patrol officers would have to try and fit it in their lunch break. This is a separate break, completely different than a lunch break. They can have a lunch break, but they don't have to work out. They can actually, you know, go off into the corner and they can kind of readjust, because if we don't have a well officer out there serving our community, then we're going to have problems on down the line. So we have a lot of robust programs that are in place. Now, granted, we can always do better. But, you know, I'm very fortunate because whenever I was first hired on this department, none of these programs existed. And I can promise you, we have done so well in the Blue Chip program that we actually ran out of funds and we had to go get additional funding to help promote that program.
So from, you know, an overall staffing perspective, my theory is always going to do it four ways. Number one, we need to recruit, and we would recruit ferociously. But number two, we need to make sure that we keep our people that are here. Number three, we want to bring laterals from within the state of Texas. And we also want to bring, and we want to, in the last piece, we want to bring laterals, other officers in other places, and bring them here. And then the last part to overall staffing is do our best to make sure that when someone's eligible to retire, that they don't leave the next day. to try to when the day they're eligible, don't hopefully do some incentives so that they don't leave. One of the things that we talk about recruiting, yes, having 100 people in an academy is fantastic. The problem is, or the issue is when we put the importance on that only, those 100 officers aren't going to be solo beat officers for well over a year. They have a long academy, they have an FTO program, and although they count against the authorized staffing levels, they're not going to be effective for over a year. So that's why it's so imperative and important to work to make sure that we keep our people here. When we look at our people here, we need to use data to tell us, where are we losing officers? Are we losing them at the 25 to 30 mark? Are we losing them at the 20 to 25 mark? Where are we losing our officers? And when we're able to pinpoint where we're losing the majority of officers, we can then start looking at, what things can we do to incentivize them staying here longer? From the retirement perspective, what can incentivize our individuals that are eligible to retire to stay a little bit longer? Those are the things that, from a holistic plan, that when you look at a department, using data to see where the gaps are at. When it comes to laterals, we need to seriously pump up the city of how supportive this city is for public safety. I will tell you this, when I came from California to Texas, I came from a place that people that support law enforcement are afraid to say they support law enforcement for fear of retribution. When I got to Texas, this doesn't occur here. Yes, you hold us accountable, but you support us as well. And I'll tell you this, as kids are kicking the tires to look at the departments around this country, they want to know where they're going to get supported. They want to know where their community supports them. They know that they're going to be held accountable, but who supports me? And we'll tell that to the laterals if they don't feel the support where they're at. We can boast that. And so we need to take that on. We need to take that on the road. We as chiefs need to go and give that message to a potential recruit. I've done it many times, and it's enjoyable to talk to these young individuals that want to come and hear it from me that you want to be here. And so when we look at that overall staffing plan, that's how we do it. Yes, we have to recruit. There's no question about it. Yes, we have to stop attrition from as much as it occurs. We need to keep our people from retiring the day they're retirement eligible, and we need to bring in laterals. And we need to make sure that the people that are here, that we're keeping them happy so that they want to stay here. Those are the overall ways to have staffing. When it comes to wellness, again, as the chief said, I support everything that the chief just said, and I'm happy that these programs are occurring here in Fort Worth, because we instituted the same programs in Dallas. We wanted to have check-ins. We wanted to have counseling services available. We started an alcohol rehabilitation program for our officers. And one of the things we found, and once we started those units, that our wellness unit was getting more referrals for our officers going to counseling than city psych services. And so that tells you that, to the point that Chief made, these systems didn't occur. When I started in 1992, if an officer had an issue and they told their partner, hey, that call kind of messed me up, that officer would tell his partner, dude, you got to suck it up. We got 10 more hours. If that same officer would have told their lieutenant in 1992, that call kind of screwed me up, that lieutenant would tell that officer, you know what, kid, maybe this isn't the right job for you. And so I say that only because mental wellness and us being able to say to our officers, it's okay to not be okay, is one of the biggest changes and one of the biggest culture shifts in American law enforcement that's happened in the last 30 years. And so it warms my heart to hear that all these programs, that we're putting our money where our mouth is, that we're not just in Dallas and here, that we're not just saying get on an app, because that's not mental wellness. And so we need to continue to strive for that.
Absolutely. And it sounds like Fort Worth is on the right track, because he just mentioned some of the stats I would be looking for. So I think the first thing we do is, look, every decision I make, if someone asks me, the unions and command staff hate it, but every time you ask me for something, I'm going to ask for the data. And so the data he talks about is the first analysis. You look at where your choke points are. So in those 1,800 applications, how many of them fail and why? And are there choke points where minority applicants or women applicants are being disqualified that we can address, whether it's from their side in education, like I saw where they do some workouts and things to get them through the PT, or is it a test-taking issue with minority officers and we got to get that civil service grade up so that they're higher up on that 1,800 list? So what are the things in that choke point that we can address first? Because if we're getting adequate applications, then we can get adequate academy classes. Then we need to know, where are we most successful in reporting and recruiting those women and minorities and other officers? If there's places we're going over and over and we're not getting the result, then stop going there and go into places where we do. And then explore new places, whether that be HBCUs or other schools. Typically, when we're recruiting, we focus on criminal justice programs at the colleges. There's social workers and other folks that want to do something to help people. What is the ultimate social experience beyond policing? And so get some of these other folks that might have a mindset of wanting to help people and have them think about jobs they can do within the police department. When we talk about tracking of applicants, many times an applicant is disqualified for something they did and they might be eligible in 30 days. Are we tracking them? Are we calling them back in 30 days? Are we calling them back in 6 months after you've been disqualified? Said, hey, now you meet the criteria. So do we have those tickle files available? And are we utilizing them? When we talk about wellness, look, it's the sixth pillar of 21st century policing. You can't do this job without wellness. And as Chief said, we didn't have these resources. So I'm glad to hear all the resources Fort Worth is putting forward because they're taking the sixth pillar seriously. The only thing I haven't seen or heard about is what are they doing about the finance? We lead one of the top 5 careers in divorce. And 50% of those divorces come down to finances. So what are we doing to help them with their financial health, their spiritual health, and their mental health? And we'll continue to move forward and make this the best place to work, period. And that's how you stop attrition.
All right, gentlemen. This is an important question. You have 90 seconds. Are we going to nod and agree? All right. This is important now. What is your position on police oversight? I'd love for you to discuss your approach to working with community advisory groups and or external monitors. Mr. Garcia, you'd go first.
90 seconds. Okay. So ever since I was a police officer in 1992 in San Jose, California, we had oversight. I have never worked for a police department that did not have oversight. It's not new to me. Working closely with an oversight monitor is something that I do on a bi-weekly basis or a monthly basis with regards to meeting on Fridays, having discussions about where we're out of complaints, where we've had disagreements on what IA's findings have been. And I will tell you this, out of probably half the time, I'll tell you, I've told my auditor, you know what, you're right. We're going to fix it. And the other half, it's like, listen, I don't agree, but we've had open lines of communication. I'm a firm believer. We need to have oversight. I'll just say this out loud. We need to have monitor. We are a profession that can legally take people's rights away. We need someone to be watching us to ensure we're doing it right. And I have no issue with that. And we have nothing to hide. When we're wrong, we're wrong. When we're right, we'll defend our men and women. But working with a monitor is something that I'm used to, that I've done, that we can work together. It doesn't have to be there has to be healthy friction that exists. And that's been great. Working with boards and other things, we had one particularly in Dallas, making sure that we're responsive to what their needs are, making sure that we give them information when we can to come up with solutions and recommendations that they can give for a police department. But again, from an oversight perspective, and I know I got like 5 seconds, but I'm going to say that's the only way I've ever known how to be a chief has been with oversight.
First of all, oversight is not an option. The only options we're talking about is what that looks like. As you know, there are various forms of oversight, whether it be investigative, review, or monitor. And so the first thing we do is assess what we have in our current police monitor, what your expectations and desires are from a oversight committee, and try to close that gap, whatever that may be. So it may be a hybrid system and none of those. It might be a combination, work with the monitor and doing what we do. Then from there, we have to ensure we have transparency. We have to create dashboards where you don't have to do open records requests. You don't have to call the chief and say what happened with this. We have dashboards where all the information on our uses of force, our discipline outcomes, and all those things are right there on the website, updated on a regular basis. It has to be done. It's not an option. Some of our experience with that, as you may have seen in 2021, the state of Maryland did away with the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights altogether, eliminated it. And so we went through a tragic, not tragic, but a colossal police reform effort in creating administrative charging committees, police oversight boards, and those things. So I'm ready to work with those stakeholders to see what our form looks like to make it best for this community.
So for the Fort Worth Police Department, oversight is kind of what I would say somewhat in its infancy because it was created out of the Race and Culture Task Force. Our first oversight monitor was Kim Neal. I had a great relationship with Kim. She made recommendations over and over again. We did not always agree on all the recommendations. Currently, we have Bonsil Shokumbi. I have a really good working relationship with her as well. OPOM is part of not only our use of force review board committee, but they're also sit in on our hiring and applicant interviews. And so she has access to anything she wants pretty much within the police department. We are very, very transparent with her. She's very, very transparent with us. It's been a great working relationship. I think the officers respect her because she went around to roll calls, explained what her role was, answered questions for the officers. So there isn't really that distrust that's going on. I know that Kim Neal started this program, but Bonsil took it a little bit further, which was our mediation program. And that's for officers that may have some either rudeness issues or minor violations to sit down with the other person that was involved to try and work it out in a very formal setting so they could have an honest discussion. That's actually been very productive, and we've had some really good reports on both sides out of those discussions. And so to me, that's kind of repaired some of our trust. So I trust Bonsil. I trust what she does. Doesn't mean we always agree, but the recommendations she has made, we have implemented some of those, and it's been very positive for our department.
All right, gentlemen, you will each have 2 minutes for closing remarks now. And the question that we would like you to answer within those remarks is, why are you the person who should be selected as the next chief of police for the city of Fort Worth? And what would you most want to be remembered for in that role? Mr. Hale, you will go first.
How did I get this first?
I mean, you went last to start, so I'm trying to have a little equity.
I went to public school, So, first of all, I believe I have a unique mix of visionary leadership, operational experience, and leading an organization through crisis and police reform, always focusing on integrity, accountability, crime reduction, and officer wellness. And I can bring that to Fort Worth. My leadership philosophy is what I call the 3 Ps. My job is to provide you the resources you need, whether it be the community, the cop, or the city. Project you to your highest potential, no matter what community you are or what rank officer you are. And protect you, sometimes from yourself, which officers don't sometimes understand. I was acting bureau commander in July of 2016 when we lost 5 officers in Dallas. And after those debriefings and things of that sort, I learned to add one more word to that because I never once used this word in a police station, and that's love. And I had to learn that we do love our cops, but cops were always too tough to say it. And so now I provide, project, and protect with love. And that's what I plan to bring to the Fort Worth Police Department. Thank you.
So I believe that one of the things that makes me the best candidate for the job is, number one, my extreme institutional knowledge of this department, how we got where we are today, whether it's the controversial incidents we've had in 2016, 2019, 2020, some of the challenges that we've had to overcome within the community. I have built relationships over the past 2 decades with some community members that are sitting in the audience today. My goal is to continue to build those relationships even further with people that I haven't even met yet. Overall, I know the department on the operational side. I understand what it's like to be that patrol officer out on the street answering the calls. I understand the challenges. Officer wellness to me is one of my top priorities because, as it was said earlier, I mean, my motto is, it's okay not to be okay. It is okay to ask for help. And so the institutional knowledge alone of where we got to, where we are, I have already started instituting some changes within the police department since I've taken over as interim chief. My goal is to continue those and continue building those relationships in the community, continuing the community policing, philosophy that has gone on for over the past 2 decades within this city. And my goal is to continually build relationships in the community, in the department, to make sure that we are the safest city in the city, and our officers are the wellest officers out in the street, taking care of one another and taking care of our citizens.
I guess I'm last. I'm what's keeping everybody from dinner. Sweet. It's difficult for this question because obviously both these candidates are amazing. But I'll say, I mean, one of the dynamics that I've had the luxury and I've had the honor of serving as the chief, not a number two, the chief, the one whose the responsibility lies on for two major cities in this country, the 10th largest city in the country and the 9th largest city in the country. And I will tell you, bringing those experiences and those pressures and those sleepless nights when the buck falls with you alone and working with a team to have been successful in two other large cities and being able to come with a lens that we can look at and say, yeah, what we're doing here is great, but have we thought about maybe doing it like this? I was a past major city chiefs president and dealing with having relationships from throughout the country and friends throughout the country and major city chiefs, not only in the United States, but in Canada, that we've spoken about these issues to look at policies, procedures, morale, wellness, and these working groups, and bringing those relationships to bear is important and something that I think, is helpful. One of the things, as I mentioned before, again, it's not new to me coming to a new department and learning the department quickly and looking at the things that are needed. But I truly feel that with the experience of having been the 4-star chief in two other large cities, that I can bring something to the table here in Fort Worth. And my goal would be exactly like, well, we want to make Fort Worth the safest, largest city in this country. But we want to do it with a community that thinks its police department is the best in this country. We want to do it with officers that feel that their department is the best in this country. And if anything that I want to be remembered by it, I want it to be remembered by being a chief that cares about his community as much as he cares for his rank and file.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the forum. Please help me congratulate and thank our candidates. On behalf of the city of Fort Worth, gentlemen, I want to say thank you for coming out and participating in this forum.
Dia, before you dismiss everybody, I just wanted to say on behalf of the city of Fort Worth, the citizens of Fort Worth, the mayor and council, thank you for such an outstanding job that you've done for us tonight. Thank you so much.
Of course, it was an honor. Hey, scan that QR code. Give the city the feedback. It closes tonight. Y'all be safe. Have a great night, everyone.